And so today, again, I ask you to think about the love of God and how much God has done in your life.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I couldn't learn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Good morning, church family. Thank you for inviting me here. For those of you who don't know me, I am a teacher at one time, and currently I am a counselor. And I am also an elder in the Victoria Church, which has brought me here today. So I mentioned the teaching part because... Yes. The teaching will come up again. I'm trying not to touch this. It's set just where we want it. Anyways, I'd like to begin with a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here today, and we invite the Holy Spirit in to speak with our hearts, to help us understand and to help hear the message. I pray that the speaker will not be a stumbling block to anyone. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so my topic is joy. And I want to begin by saying that being human and wanting joy are inseparable. And so I'll talk about the power of joy. As we well know, the world is a fracturing place, and each of us is split in some degree by the evil in the world. When I say that, I'm talking about the kind of things that cause us harm or cause us overwhelming feelings or negative feelings. And we really do automatically seek joy. We're set up for it, to seek it. Yet within us, each of us, is a drive to withstand the world's assaults, hurt, loneliness, injury, and to become the person we were intended to be. God created us with minds that automatically seek to be whole, and the quest for wholeness is wonderfully boosted by the joy during early childhood. Now, I'm talking about developmental joy. It's not a luxury item. It's actually something that helps us sustain injury, sustain hard times, when you're a little person and you lose a friend or you drop a toy in a mud puddle. That is a catastrophe. The same way as when we lose something that is important to us. And what we want to do is be able to seek the joy, to return to joy. We don't carry it around with us for the most part, but we want to be able to return to it. And that is found in the gaze of our caregivers. When we're newborn infants, our mother's gaze and our father's gaze and holding us are where we feel complete. Infants don't even know that they're separate from their mother for some time. But they feel connected. That's a feeling of joy and contentment. So it's a developmental imperative. In a child's first 2 years, the desire to experience joy in loving relationships is the most powerful force in life. In fact, some neurologists say that the basic human need is to be the sparkle in someone's eye. And God would say, the apple of my eye. When you catch a glimpse of a child's face as they run toward an awaiting parent with arms outstretched in unrestrained joy, you can witness the incredible power that comes from being the sparkle in someone's eye. The message is, I can relax, I am safe, I'm loved. You learn joy in your early development, and this is a really key part of it. When joy is the strongest force in a child's world, life makes sense because children look forward to moments when they can reconnect to joy by being with their beloved. They can explore the world, experience their own little catastrophes, and return to joy, which helps them regulate emotions and develop maturity. And there are adults walking around that have missed that experience, and they have missed a part of their developing of maturity. It doesn't mean that they can't reclaim that territory through God, but when we miss that experience, our negative feelings can be quite overwhelming. So, wonderfully enough, that innocent, pure desire that begins in childhood continues throughout life, and that is a key factor. So I talk to a lot of people that there's different types of trauma, and this research categorizes this as type A trauma, and that is absence trauma. If you have if your caregiver isn't there, if you don't have those needs for joy met when you're very, very young, you don't automatically return to it. You know what's missing, though. That's an absence trauma. So I've talked to someone, more than one person, who has been devastated and actually thought, maybe I shouldn't have been born. Maybe there's no place for me in this world. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, baby, you just didn't get joy. Because joy is relational. It is also a contagious experience. And I want to sort of go over to the other side of that. A lot of emotions are contagious. And if you think about it in your own life, you've walked into a room and you're like, ooh, there's something really dark going on here, or I just walked into something really negative. I'm sure that that's relatable, right? Or you're working with the public and someone just comes and just complains to you in such a way that makes you feel rattled inside. You know, that is contagious. So they have shared something or emitted something. This is not New Age. This is research. This is how we are. We are a little bit absorbent to people's feelings. And so sometimes they don't even have to say something. You see someone coming your way and you just want to sort of cross the sidewalk and go to the other side because it just doesn't look like it will be pleasant. And I have a son, and I can remember him coming out of his room as a teenager, and I'm like, okay, he doesn't even have to say anything. I know where this is. I'm going to just stay right where I am. But it might have been a really good time for an intervention to go and make eye contact and have a smile. In fact, I was walking yesterday, and I've been writing this and thinking a lot about joy, and there was a woman at the hospital sitting outside in the sun. And I know that I had unconsciously the smile on my face, right? Because I know that it can do something different than a flat face can. And so gradually, she just was catching my eye, and this huge smile came across her face. And it was that contagion of joy. Okay. Joy is produced when someone is glad to be with me. And that's another thing. Keep it in mind. We need people who are glad to be with us in our lives. Then my joy is returned, and the giver's joy is increased as well. So this stirs up something in me. The experience goes back and forth at amazingly fast rates, 6 cycles per second, in a nonverbal face-to-face exchange. So what I had with this lady yesterday happened very quickly, but it was bumping it up each time for both of us. So we're not just giving it out and it's going nowhere, you know? We're getting it back. All the time growing stronger, joy between both people. Joy also comes with being in a relationship with God. Throughout the Bible, it is established that a powerful joy comes from a relationship with God, who knows everything about me and is still glad to be with me. We are the apple of his eye, and he is glad to be with us. Can I have you go to Deuteronomy 32:10 again, please? And I'd like you to read it, but I would like you to read it with you in mind, saying it out loud. I think that we need to hear it, reading these words into ourselves. Just raise your hand when you're ready. Okay, so this will be out loud. He found me in a desert land, and in the waste howling wilderness. He led me about. He instructed me. He kept me as the apple of his eye. Now, I think that the apple of his eye, this is not an empty phrase. When you're the apple of someone's eye, they are tuned in. They're paying attention. You're heard. You're witnessed. A lot of what happens, even in a counseling room, is about being heard and being witnessed, having that pain be able to come out and still be in this safe environment, you know, but also allowing it, being the center of someone's attention. Now, when ancient biblical authors inspired by God and 21st century neuroscientists propelled by knowledge all agree that joy comes through powerful relationships, we know there is something profoundly important to be learned from this. We can gain that survival strength. We can become a little bit well defended. So we're never going to avoid these negative feelings being put into us because we're just absorbent. But we can return to joy, which does make me think about, you know, we can sort of glimpse joy, we can experience it, we can return to it. But in heaven, it's going to be joy all the time, increasing. I can't even imagine that. I try, but it's just, how can we take it? In fact, when joy strength is properly laid, and that is in infancy, or when you've taken the time to develop that, if it isn't in infancy, just the knowledge that someone would be glad to be with me, even if not physically present at the moment, is enough to return me to joy. Images of faces, the memory of their responses, and the presence of God can all sufficiently return us to joy. And so here's where teaching in the UK comes up. I worked in a very difficult school. It was a behavior school. And the students, the culture there was nobody's an authority, especially a foreign female teacher. And so it was a very steep learning curve. And there was something about me working there. I kind of knew that it was, that God had opened the way. It was really prayerfully done, and all of a sudden I was losing my apartment. My stuff was in storage by the time I got the call. I had no place to live. So the timing was not coincidental. And so I go there, and I knew that this was God, but it was still, frightening going into this new situation, losing all of my supports. I had no car. I had to take care of myself in a different way. And then I go, and I'm getting pummeled at work every day and trying to develop all these lessons. And even though I knew God had opened the way for it, I thought he was wrong. I thought he had made a mistake. And so I actually gave my notice twice in the first term and never quit. But I was really suffering. It was trauma. It wasn't just difficult. They were throwing things at me. There was no control, and I cared about teaching, and I wanted to be the adult and, work my way through it and think about it, and it wasn't happening. And so I would call my mother, the person who I knew was always glad to be with me. I'm the apple of her eye. And she would talk with me, and she would just say, it's okay, And I can remember complaining one time, and I'm in England, and I said, them and their fake little accents. And my mom at the end of the line just said, I think their accents are real, Cary. But it was quite upsetting. And then the half-term holiday came, and I got pneumonia. And I think that God actually gave me pneumonia, or at least he made something good come out of it, because I was so sick that I couldn't work for at least 2 more weeks. And it gave me time to say, okay, God, I'll go in tomorrow, but that's it, and that's all I'll commit to. And it helped me not feel so trapped and overwhelmed. But really, knowing that God was with me, it was about that joy, returning to joy in him, because I'm like, I am not feeling a lot of joy here, but I know that he does have joy in us. And I know that my mother did too, and she was on the line supporting me. And that got me through, and I ended up staying and becoming head of the art department, and but that first year, and it never got better, I will say. It never got better that first year. Even the art tech was like, man, that never got better. But God did get me through. So when people get their joy properly connected to feelings that have been damaged by a fracturing world, they sense new power and aliveness in all of their relationships. The brain is designed to protect us from a damaging world and work very hard to repair the fractures. If functioning properly, the family and community are also designed to assist the brain in its jobs of protection and repair. We don't do this alone. We need other minds in there with us, other people, other people's presence, their happiness to be with us. I was working with a student. Actually, I wasn't working with her. We had a student that was going home to take her life. And she was in the hallway and right in front of the counseling department and debating, do I go in? Do I go home? It was right there. And She goes in, and there's no one in the department. We were, all the counselors were at an assembly that was, about mental health stuff, so we were all excited. And I just happened to go back for a second, and there she was. We talked through, we worked through the stuff, but you have to have relationship. It can't be someone just like on a checklist. We have to be present in those moments, And that's where that joy increasing, that eye contact, that presence of listening intently it makes the difference. If it was just somebody behind a desk saying, "Oh, so you're feeling poorly," it wouldn't help anything, right? We have to be there as individuals to support each other. Again, being human and wanting joy are inseparable. Particularly for those who are in recovery, it is essential to be in authentic, joy-producing relationships that can build joy strength and assist in returning to joy. If a person in recovery is not empowered by joy, it may be impossible to face the pain that is part of recovery. In fact, the amount of joy strength available needs to be higher than the amount of pain. And when you think about that, our little contribution to being there means something. People don't do this alone, We need another voice. I've spoken to someone who was so suicidal they stayed home all day and tried to fight it, and eventually couldn't fight it anymore. But they listened to videos. They did what they could to save their own lives. But in the end, there was no one in there with them. They had no one they could call, right? Fortunately, it didn't. The attempt failed, but it was a real attempt. Therefore, building joy through life-giving relationships is often the first part of recovery. It's not everything. We still have to work to have the healing. That's God's work, but we have to access it. And we can't access that alone without really, if we can't access joy, we don't have enough to calm our mind to get to healing. So, when hidden wounds get healed, joy is an automatic result. It's no small thing. So essential is joy that having enough joy strength is fundamental to a person's well-being. We know that the joy center exists in the right orbital prefrontal cortex of the brain. It has executive control over the entire emotional system. When the joy center has been sufficiently developed, it regulates emotions, pain control, and immunity centers. It guides us to act like ourselves. And that is, to me, like a really deep thought. This is based on research, that part. And acting like ourselves, have you ever heard people do stuff impulsively, they're not happy with it, they're like, that's not me, that's not the way I want to be, that's not who I feel like I am inside. But because they're overwhelmed with emotions, because they haven't got that access to joy, or that even that person in their lives that isn't there but would be happy to see them, their joy center is not activated, it's not working at full capacity, and they can't overcome as easily. So acting like ourselves is like that dream of ourselves, that higher, better self. It releases neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, and it is the only part of the brain that overrides the main drive centers: food, sexual impulses, terror, rage, appetites. So it's not a small thing. It's not a luxury item. It takes a lifetime belonging to a family, receiving and giving joy, overcoming the effects of traumas, contributing to a community. People do not get stuck when family and community smooth the pathway through these basics in life. Maturity progresses, and what we're talking about is maturity, the ability to put self second, to be self-sacrificing, to regulate what comes out of your mouth, your impulses, those things. Maturity progresses, and God's redemption brings strength out of pain. If maturity stalls, if people get stuck, therapy and living in a supportive environment can support it. This empowers people to live in bonds of love so they can get unstuck on their way to wholeness. So that's kind of, in summary, I have a little handout, and I thought we could just, talk it through for a minute. But I just want to summarize and say joy is not a luxury feeling. It is a necessity to become fully developed. It can be cultivated, It doesn't have to be like, I just wake up in the morning and I feel good, It can be cultivated because we don't wake up like that for a lot of the times. God takes and gives joy in us. We can be intentional, absolutely, in returning to joy and in helping others. Joy has the power to help ourselves and others heal. And I would like to add in, and this also should have been on that little handout. The handout was just sort of like how we can intentionally do this. But I would say the first 3 cardinal steps to this would be, we can use this for self and others. Press into God's presence. It's going to just be, an outcome will be joy, overwhelming joy. I'm sure that at times everyone in this room has felt that joy. Read aloud promises, reading yourself into them. We need to hear them. It's another way of learning. So reading is one thing, silent prayer is another thing, but actually speaking it and putting your name in there is another thing. And speak blessings to others. Remember encouragement of their successes, of their value, That's a blessing you're speaking into someone else. So again, that can be intentional. And it doesn't have to be fake. In fact, it has to be authentic. We can learn this if we don't know it. So I'll just go over this little thing. Building joy means getting closer to God and to people. While it is a very authentic process that cannot be fabricated, here are some joy-building ideas to first practice with our families and then extend to the wounded or injured community. Smile whenever you greet those you love and use sincere voice tones. It's like being present. And you're putting something good into them. And that is in a literal sense. You're actually putting something good into them rather than just turning away. It's an opportunity. Ask questions that invite others to tell you truthfully how they are doing and what they are thinking. Listen intently without interrupting. Take a sincere interest in really knowing the other person. Work hard to understand the other person's fears, joys, passions, talents, and pain. Treat each other with dignity and respect. When ending a discussion, try to make both people feel affirmed. It's like that little hug at the end of an email or a letter, It's a little hug. Now, I'm a little bit of a, can't think of the word now, introvert. And so some of these are challenging. I'm reading this to myself because I have a lot of work to do there. I'm an introvert. My job requires confidentiality, so every time I open my mouth, I'm like, oh, trying to catch it, And my friend Cheryl, who's not here today, calls me a vault. So obviously I have work to do. Use touch whenever appropriate. Hold hands, link arms, give hugs, and use physical affection as effectively as you can. Discover what brings the person joy, a time to talk, encouraging notes, a helping hand, or evening walks. And that kind of, whenever I read that, I'm tying that into love languages. What makes them feel loved? Give them little surprises that cause their eyes to light up and let your eyes light up too. And that is key. Eye contact, connection, tuning in. The joy builds as the glances go back and forth. And then, this one's just for Kygo, I guess, for today. Cherish babies and children by establishing through words and actions that you are authentically glad to be with them.